Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of March 20th. And I want to thank the great late Sam Cooke for that tune, Bring It On Home. No political message in that, really. I just liked hearing it the other day, and I thought it'd be nice for some sharing on the Live from the Heartland show. Our next guest is someone who now we've had on a few times. I would always look forward to his emails. Good news for humankind. The one and only Peter Schulte. He's up there in Bellingham, Washington, and he always has a whole bunch of information that is refreshing, uplifting, more or less cheerful, and important to the future of the world. So good day to you, Peter Schulte. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's good to be here. It feels like these last few weeks have maybe been particularly dark in the world and distressing. And so maybe time for good news more than ever. We'll
start us off with a little bit of good news.
Yeah. Okay. So one that just came through today in my newsletter was the EU, the European Union has banned testing on animals for everyday cosmetic products. So this has been a really widespread practice, but they're moving towards using like human cells that they can kind of create in cultures, I think. And then also they can do all sorts of modeling that, predict the testing and get out of using rabbits and mice and things like that. So that's a big step for animal rights.
That's good. What is the general status of animal rights in the world, to your knowledge?
Of animal rights? I mean, that's a big question. I think in terms of animal testing, there have been more and more strides. In terms of the animals that we eat for meat, I think a lot of people would argue that the conditions are very, very poor. And that, those markets are only growing, if anything, around the world. So you could make it different cases. Yeah.
I think one of the things, though, Peter, is that sometimes these EU regulations then have a knock-on effect over here in the United States. And if cosmetics companies can't test in Europe, they'll be using those products. They'll be selling those products in the United States that are not tested on animals. And we've seen this with things like the cookie browser pop-ups that you now get. That's came from a European legislation saying you must have the right to opt out of these things. So I'm just sort of wondering, is it hopeful that these things will have a knock-on effect in the US?
Absolutely. I think California has a similar effect. It's such a big economy in the United States that when it does something, it kind of forces or it makes it a lot easier for others to follow. So that's certainly the hope. But time will tell.
Well, give us another one, Peter. I like that. Just you're pulling them out of a hat.
Yeah. All right. So Kazakhstan, the Central Asian nation, it's actually a huge by size nation, has started planning replanting these ancient forests on the lake or on the lake shore of, I think it's called Lake Balkhash. And it's specifically to prepare for the reintroduction of tigers, which have traditionally lived there but largely gone away. And they've just recently introduced the first two tigers. So they're preparing to reintroduce those. Similarly, Turkmenistan, which is not too far off, has seen a recent resurgence in the Persian leopard. So they found like 60 to 80 of them out in the wild in recent months, when before they had been basically brought to extinction. So a resurgence of the big cats in Central Asia.
Well, what will that mean I know in Africa we have situations where elephants' turf continually shrinks, and there are issues with in a number of countries with wild animals and local agrarian populations. And are we going to see that thing happen in that first one about the tigers? Or is it rural enough there won't be an agricultural threat to their reintroduction?
I'm not going to claim to be an expert on how it things are going down in Kazakhstan, or how, my people tend to use that kind of arguments around like wolves in the Western United States.
Yeah.
I think by and large, they're often not very accurate and compelling. I don't think there's a lot of issues with tigers, especially at these levels of population. So I
was kind of joking around, but I do appreciate the thing about wolves and what goes on in the States. And even like too many buffaloes, they take them out, in Yellowstone every year or two. Peter Schulte, what do you got? What's another good news for humankind?
Yeah, so one of my top story from last week was there was a recent study that was looking at cities across the world, and 19 of the biggest cities in the world, I think including London, San Francisco, and Beijing, have seen more than 20% improvement in air pollution since 2010. And they measured that by two measures. It was nitrogen dioxide and particulate pollution. And so this is, major strides for these big cities that are in many cases only growing, and it, can have an effect on environmental pollution, but also saves just hundreds of thousands and even millions of lives around the world. Like air pollution is a major public health concern. And some of these biggest cities are seeing some big gains. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things there is like London had the congestion charges and congestion taxes on vehicles driving into the city. And obviously China, we know, is a leader in electric vehicles. And so I think some of these policies that seem to be harder to pass in the United States, if not being actively opposed, we can see the health benefits of them, over a 15-year period.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I saw something recent in the last few years. I had a story. It was, we're used to seeing pictures of Beijing where it's just totally clouded over with smog. And kind of for the first time in a long time, they're starting to be able to have these clear days where they can see the mountains, and it's really opening up. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Give us another good news for humankind.
Yeah. So the U.S. West Coast groundfish fishery. So groundfish are many different types of fish that include rockfish and several different types of cod and other fish, had along the west coast of the United States been totally depleted, and 10 species have made a big comeback, like 60 years ahead of schedule. So these fisheries on the west coast are rebounding, and of course that's great for the livelihoods of fisher people there, and it's great for the ecosystems. And from what I understand, they were able to do it from fairly simple techniques of like having periods where they don't fish and using different types of gear. So that's a big one. I fished in Alaska for a couple summers, so that one's a little bit close to my heart.
I just met a guy at a Loyola track event, a reunion, when our friend and commentator Gordon Thompson was inducted into the Loyola Hall of Fame, and one of his runners works for the Illinois Fisheries, and he is going to come on the show. So we're going to be talking more fish. How about, Peter, you give us one more good news for humankind for this week?
Sure. So India has just started this massive campaign to offer free HPV vaccinations for girls across the country. So, this is like hundreds of millions of people, I think, or maybe not hundred, millions and millions and millions of girls, and has been shown to, drastically reduce the incidence of cervical cancer. It's a really effective solution, and it's going to be available for free for girls across India. So that's just a huge public health win. Yeah.
Well, this is good. And I want to thank you for coming on. It's always a treat to hear these little bits of good info. Keep them coming, Peter, and hopefully you'll join us again next month.
Hey, Peter.
We got Euan's got a thing.
I was going to say, Peter, how can you mentioned you have a newsletter? So you're not on the show every week, but how can people get your newsletter?
Yeah, thank you. It's Peter Schulte, SCHULTE.org/newsletter. And it features a good piece of good news every day and kind of a tool or insight from my coaching program, and it's totally free. Yeah, thanks for asking.
And how often you play that guitar behind you?
Pretty much every day. I love playing
guitar.
Good. Yeah.
Well, we're really glad to have you coming on the show. It's really uplifting, and we'll see you next month. Everybody else.